The Ghostly Whisperer. The rumors about the Lennox house had circulated for years. Perched on a desolate hill just outside of town, the crumbling mansion was said to be cursed, haunted by a ghost that whispered in the dead of night. Locals avoided the place, but for me, it was irresistible. I was a journalist chasing ghost stories, and the Lennox house seemed like the perfect subject. As I stood before its weathered facade, the wind howled through broken windows, and an eerie chill crept up my spine. Despite the unease, I stepped inside. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, and the faint sound of whispers seemed to echo from the walls. The first night in the house was uneventful. I set up my equipment, cameras, audio recorders, EMF meters, and settled into a dusty armchair with my notebook. But as the clock struck midnight, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew colder, and the whispers began. At first, they were faint, indistinct murmurs. I couldn't make out the words, but they seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. My heart raced as I strained to listen, but the more I focused, the more elusive they became. I tried to dismiss it as my imagination, but when I reviewed the audio recordings the next morning, the whispers were there, clear and unmistakable. By the second night, the whispers grew louder and more coherent. "You don't belong here," a voice hissed, low and guttural. I froze, my flashlight trembling in my hand. "Who's there?" I called, my voice echoing through the empty halls. The whispers responded, overlapping and chaotic. "Leave, before it's too late." Determined not to let fear control me, I pressed on. But as I explored the house, the whispers followed me, growing more menacing with each step. In one of the upstairs bedrooms, I discovered an old, leather-bound diary. The pages were yellowed with age, and the handwriting was faded but legible. The diary belonged to Margaret Lennox, the last known resident of the house. Her entries chronicled a descent into madness. "The whispers won't stop," one entry read. "They know my secrets. They know what I've done." Another entry, dated just days before her death, was more chilling. "The ghost is no longer content with whispers. It wants blood." I dug deeper into the history of the Lennox family. Margaret had been accused of poisoning her husband and children, though no evidence was ever found. After their deaths, she lived alone in the house for years, until she was discovered hanging from the attic rafters. Locals believed her guilt had driven her to suicide, but the whispers suggested something far more sinister. By the third night, the whispers had become relentless. They spoke of things no one could know, my fears, my regrets, my darkest secrets. "You're a fraud," one voice sneered. "You let her die," another whispered, bringing back memories of my sister's drowning, a tragedy I had always blamed myself for. I shouted into the darkness, demanding the ghost reveal itself. The whispers stopped abruptly, and the silence was deafening. Then a cold hand brushed against my shoulder. I spun around, but no one was there. Desperate for answers, I consulted a local medium, an elderly woman named Clara. She agreed to perform a cleansing ritual, but warned me of the risks. "This spirit feeds on fear and guilt," she said. "It will do everything it can to break you." We returned to the house armed with candles, incense, and a book of ancient prayers. As Clara began the ritual, the whispers erupted in a deafening cacophony. "Get out!" they screamed. The walls trembled, and shadows writhed like living creatures. Clara continued chanting, her voice steady despite the chaos. As the ritual reached its peak, the whispers coalesced into a single voice, deep, resonant, and filled with malice. "You cannot banish me," it declared. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form shifting and amorphous. Its eyes were empty voids, and its presence radiated pure malevolence. The room grew impossibly cold, and Clara collapsed to the floor, clutching her chest. "Finish the ritual," she gasped. I picked up the book and continued chanting, my voice shaking but determined. The spirit shrieked in rage as the ritual neared completion. It lashed out, knocking over furniture and shattering windows. "You will pay for this," it roared. Summoning every ounce of courage, I recited the final incantation. The spirit let out a blood-curdling scream as its form dissolved into a swirling vortex of darkness. The whispers faded, and the house fell silent. Clara survived, though she warned me the spirit was not truly gone. "It's bound to the house," she said. "As long as the house stands, so does its curse." I left the Lennox house that night, vowing never to return. But the experience stayed with me, haunting my dreams and filling me with a lingering sense of dread. Months later, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a small recorder. When I pressed play, my blood ran cold. The whispers were back. "You cannot escape," they said. "We know your secrets." The haunting wasn't over. It had only just begun.